Chapter 1. A week from Tuesday. Is that possible? It wasn't that Lucy Banning did not want to view the next art exhibit at the up-and-coming downtown Chicago gallery. She did, keenly. But could she manage it before a week from Tuesday? If the expedition required her mother's cooperation, it would come with a price. Flora Banning would pounce on the exhibit to launch a social occasion. Floating through the gallery in her draped silk gown and overdone hat, nodding and smiling, she would scan for people who really mattered and expect Lucy to assist in this endeavor rather than pause to study the paintings. Lucy had played the dutiful daughter many times. She pointed out Mrs. Field across the crowd and bantered with the mayor. She smiled coyly at the young man who offered to fetch a refreshing drink and listened to Mrs. Pullman describe the hand-painted table service for her dinner party for 48 guests. This time, though, Lucy actually needed to scrutinize the paintings. Her art history professor would be expecting an analysis. Lucy must prove herself insightful and articulate, a student worthy to occupy a chair at the newly opened University of Chicago. Leo would do it. Lucy exhaled in relief. Her brother genuinely enjoyed examining art. Siblings barely a year apart, Lucy and Leo had been close companions since childhood. Leo wouldn't ask any questions and he wouldn't hurry her, because he would be even more absorbed in the art than she was. As the professor expounded on the particulars of what the paper must include, Lucy jotted notes, mindful that she enjoyed a rare privilege in being present. When the university opened just a year ago in 1891, its policy was to accept female students from the start. Lucy could hardly believe her good fortune, to have a prestigious college open right in Chicago and permit women to enroll. Both of her older brothers had gone east for their education, then returned to Chicago. And though Richard was only 14, the Bannings were already nudging their youngest son toward a time-tested institution as well. Much to Lucy's disappointment, her parents never seriously entertained further studies for their only daughter once she completed the requisite finishing school and toured Europe for most of a year. A wedding that would define her life had shrouded the last few years. Attending classes at the University of Chicago was not part of preparing to be a banker's wife. Nevertheless, attending the university was precisely what Lucy was doing. At least one class. Despite Flora Banning's conviction that higher education was irrelevant for her daughter, and for that matter, all young ladies with fine families with good prospects. Flora's own sister held the opposite view. In fact, when Lucy shared her secret wish with her aunt, Violet encouraged her. "But how can I take a university class without my parents knowing?" Lucy asked. "They're expecting me to marry Daniel. My mother wants to plan a wedding. I'm going to have to set a date soon. And then every minute of the day will be about the wedding." "It's one class," Aunt Violet answered. "One step. Take this one step and see where it might lead. For the time being, no one needs to know. I'll help with any expenses." While her parents and youngest brother were away at the family's lake house for most of the summer, Lucy had conjured up excuses to return to town frequently. Her work at the orphanage provided regular justifications. During those quiet weeks in the house without her parents, she applied, interviewed, and was accepted to the university. While her private self did all this in Chicago, her public self formalized her long, unofficial engagement in Lake Forest. Now, in mid-October, she was several weeks into her art history class and facing her first major assignment. Only 2 people knew the truth of Lucy's whereabouts on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons: Aunt Violet and Violet's Irish coachman, Patty, who with her blessing sometimes conspired to solve Lucy's transportation challenges. The student next to Lucy leaned toward her. "Did you get that third point? He's talking too fast." Lucy pointed with her fountain pen to the notes she had just written. 1. Composition. 2. Uniqueness of palette. 3. Use of light. The young man, not more than 17, Lucy thought, quickly copied what she had written. She wasn't surprised that he had only sparse notes on his paper. From the first week, it seemed he was in over his head. Lucy could only imagine what his other classes were like. Once again, she had to swallow the injustice. A young man lacking talent could openly attend university, but a woman with a keen mind had to sneak around. Her parents believed Lucy spent 3 afternoons a week volunteering at St. Andrew's Orphanage. So did all her brothers. So did Daniel. So did the household staff. Lucy did in fact go to the orphanage once a week, and the endeavor gave her good reason to select sturdy clothes without the usual flamboyance of the families who lived on Prairie Avenue. She fashioned her dark hair in a practical style that would not come undone while caring for small children or sorting files in the cramped office. To fight the odds she might be recognized as a Banning while roaming the university campus, Lucy wore the same unadorned garb to school as she did to the orphanage. Her mother sighed at the whole business. Lucy had trunks and racks full of European fashions, yet 3 times a week she left the house looking like hardly more than a lady's maid. Today, Lucy wore a nondescript gray flannel suit and a functional broad-brimmed black hat tipped strategically to hide her face. She remembered the day she brought the suit home. "What is that thing?" Flora Banning had asked. "I've been shopping." "Shopping? Don't tell me you bought that rag off the rack." "It's from Mr. Field's store. He deals with some quite capable dressmakers." "We have a dressmaker," Flora reminded Lucy. "I'd like to be there when you explain this to her." "I need sturdy, practical clothes to wear to the orphanage. Lene would be insulted if I asked her to make something so plain." "Everybody knows she makes your dresses. She'll be insulted that her client would wear something so plain under any circumstances." "I won't tell if you won't tell." Lucy managed a light laugh as she carried her new suit up the stairs to her mother's consternation. Lucy's figure was never quite as slim as her mother thought it should be, but her corset did its job. The suit was well made of a good quality cloth, and the tailored style was current, but nothing about the ensemble would bring particular attention to the young woman who slipped into class at the last moment and sat in the back of the lecture hall. When class was dismissed, Lucy generally fidgeted with her textbook and satchel, managing to pass enough time to find the hall sparsely populated as she left the building. Today was no different. She was the last to leave. In the corridor, Lucy schemed as she walked. An art exhibit in itself was a cultured enough event that Flora Banning would not, in principle, object to Lucy's attending. However, Lucy needed an escort for such an occasion, and the last thing she wanted was for Daniel to take her, or to explain to her mother why she did not even ask Daniel. She had to get Leo to go with her. Lucy rounded a corner and came to an abrupt stop. As the flush rose in her cheeks, she realized it was too late to backtrack. Leo had spotted her. Even if she donned clothing meant to make her look as inconspicuous as possible, Leo would never overlook her. Most of the time, Lucy was grateful for his ability to pick her out of a crowd of thousands, but not today. What was he doing leaning casually against a wall outside her classroom, chatting with a young man Lucy didn't recognize? As Leo lifted his eyes and smiled, the man turned to follow Leo's gaze. "Lucy, what are you doing here?" Leo's green eyes, matching her own, quizzed. Lucy laughed as she stepped forward to kiss her brother's cheek. "I might ask you the same thing. When you gave me a tour of your research office, I'm quite confident it was in a faraway wing of the university. The walk from there to here would qualify as a daily constitutional." Leo's field was in manufacturing technology. Why had he wandered to the fine arts department on this afternoon? Why at this moment? "I'm just giving my friend Will here a tour of the university," Leo explained. "Lucy, this is my friend Will Edwards. Will, this is my little sister, Miss Lucy Banning." Lucy shook Will's hand. "I'm happy to meet you. What is your interest in the university, Mr. Edwards?" "I'm an architect." His eyes, cobalt blue, glowed, and Lucy's heart beat just a little faster. "I've recently joined a Chicago firm that played a part in the design for the university. I thought it might help me fit in better if I looked at some of the recent projects." "Will's firm's also working on the expo," Leo said. "Burnham and Root have subcontracted them." "A lot of firms have small commissions," Will added. "That's wonderful," Lucy said. "I can't wait until opening day. Just imagine a World's Fair here in Chicago." She glanced from one man to the other and found herself returning Will's friendly smile. "Stop gawking." Lifting her chin a notch, she asked, "So tell me, how do you two know each other?" "Princeton." Leo's answer came quickly before Will could take a breath. "Oh, you're college friends, then." Will fidgeted. Not quite. Your brother is not referring to the famous College of New Jersey in Princeton, but merely the town that hosts the famous institution. You spoil my fun, Will, Leo said. Why can't you just be a Princeton man? I'm afraid I don't understand, Lucy said. Will smiled again. Those eyes. Lucy had to break the gaze before her mouth fell rudely open in fascination. I did not attend the College of New Jersey or any other college, Will explained quietly. I was engaged in an internship with an architectural firm in Princeton, New Jersey, when I met your brother at a party to which I should never have been invited. I'm sure I don't know what you mean, Mr. Edwards. Any host would be happy to have you. Looking at Will's face, Lucy could hardly remember what Daniel's looked like. She had never seen such thick, honey-colored hair on a man. His square jaw dimpled delightfully on one side. My background is considerably more humble than yours, Will said without apology, a fact that your brother kindly insists on overlooking. With good reason, I'm sure. Lucy turned to her brother. Leo, I was thinking I would like to take in the new art exhibit downtown. Perhaps you could find the time to go with me. Leo's eyes lit up. I'd love it. Then, Will, join us, won't you? No need to rearrange your schedule. They're open in the evenings. I wouldn't want to impose. Will turned his head slightly in hesitation. It's no imposition, Lucy assured him, and it wasn't. She smiled again at both Leo and Will and collected herself. I ought to be going. What's the hurry? Leo asked. Are you meeting Daniel? Lucy bristled ever so slightly. Just for some quick tea. He has a business engagement this evening. See you for dinner, Leo? When the alternative is facing the wrath of Mrs. Banning, appearing for the Thursday family dinner is clearly the rational choice. Then I'll see you tonight. She stepped away from them to continue down the hall. Wait a minute, Leo protested, reaching for her arm to stall her progress. You never told me what you were doing here. Lucy looked him in the eye. Mr. Emmett asked me to do an errand. The director of the orphanage? Lucy nodded. He has a very bright boy in his care, and he is hoping to arrange a scholarship for the young man to enroll in the art department at the university next year. Lucy regretted that she could not be forthcoming with Leo, but she was telling the truth. Philip Emmett had asked her to use her family's influence to speak for the 16-year-old boy. What she didn't mention was that she had dispatched this errand 2 weeks ago, and she had not worn a gray flannel suit when she did it. Well, did it work? Leo asked. Lucy shrugged. We're awaiting a final decision, but it would seem that the Banning name does count for something. She turned to Will. It was very nice to meet you, Mr. Edwards. I hope to see you again. You will, Leo reminded her, at the art exhibit. Oh, yes, of course. Until then. Lucy made her way to the end of the hall and down 2 flights of stairs. Outside, she walked more quickly than necessary away from the building. You are a weak-kneed chicken, she told herself. How long would Leo believe her story about the orphanage? She paused to lean against a tree, gazing back at the university's main building in waning afternoon light. Gothic stone spired at the corners as if the buildings were as old as Oxford or Cambridge, rather than a recent structure erected at the behest of John D. Rockefeller on land donated by Marshall Field, the Bannings' Prairie Avenue neighbor. She counted the familiar 4 rows of windows that lifted the eye to the turrets seeming to stake the building firmly in place. Clearly, the founders of the school did not intend for it to go anywhere anytime soon. It was a fortress of learning, of history, of tradition, even though its doors had opened just a year ago. And somehow, Lucy Banning had penetrated the fortress and earned a seat in one classroom. At that moment, though, continuing her quest seemed like throwing a feather at the building and expecting to chip the stone. What was the point? Taking one secret class at a time would mean years and years to earn a degree. Lucy would much rather have taken a leisurely carriage ride to visit Aunt Violet, who undoubtedly would know what to say to stir up Lucy's momentum. Instead, though, she was to meet Daniel in less than half an hour, and Patty was not available to whisk her downtown. Her university escapades could not be a secret forever. One of these days, she was going to have to tell Daniel the truth.